Morning, friends. Ash here, WAT News, with an election update. It's December the 2nd, 2020. I pulled this article I just caught out of Gateway Pundit breaking. Georgia elections officials were reportedly filmed destroying evidence. Ron at Code Monkey just came out with an amazing tweet a few minutes ago. Apparently Ron was with a group of people who filmed Georgia officials destroying evidence. The Georgia officials never had a clue because they didn't know the group was there, in part because Twitter had censored their hashtag Dominion Watch. Twitter did a great job censoring the Dominion Watch hashtag. Georgia elected officials had no idea we were on the ground filming them destroying evidence. We reported on Ron previously when we shared his review of Dominion voting machines per his observations from a Dominion user guide he obtained. And here's an article. One of many IT heroes uncovers damning evidence regarding potential fraud within Dominion voting machines. Ron shared numerous control weaknesses he observed in the Dominion voting machines, and then he summed it all up with this tweet. After reviewing the Dominion voting system user manual, it seems the local IT guy who services the machines is theoretically the ultimate political gatekeeper. He has absolute power to decide elections. Ron at Code Monkey Z, November the 11th. What a mess the Democrats and all corrupt politicians have gotten us into. I also wanted to cover this important article out of Gateway Pundit. A driver has come forward as a whistleblower, and he is making the claim that he was driving completed ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. I was driving completed ballots from New York to Pennsylvania, so I decided to speak up, quote unquote. USPS contract truck driver who transferred 288,000 fraudulent ballots from New York to Pennsylvania speaks at presser. So I have this gentleman's video testimony right here queued up, so let's listen to it.
So, in total I saw 24 gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. These gaylords contain plastic trays, I call them totes, but trays will work, of ballots stacked on top of each other. All the envelopes were the same size. I could see the envelopes had handwritten return addresses, and I could even tell that one was marked registered mail. That one was off to the side, all right? They were complete ballots. I didn't think much of it at the time. At Bethpage, I was first loaded with two tall gaylords. So picture that thing there, or this little representation here, but this tall, all right? So I was loaded with two tall gaylords, okay? And that were, where was I at? That had mixed mail pieces bound for Lancaster. These gaylords were loaded first because they would be the last off my trailer. The remainder of the truck was loaded with complete ballots bounded for Harrisburg. I then drove to Harrisburg with the ballots. Usually I offload in one of the 7 docks every day, but not on October 21st. I wasn't allowed to offload. That's different. Whenever I pull into Harrisburg, I go around and I get my dock and I get unloaded and then I roll out. Not that day, alright? Not that day. Instead, I was made to wait for roughly 6 hours in the yard, from 9:15 a.m. to 3 p.m. This really ticked me off, alright? Because my brother was in town. He just moved back up, and I wanted to spend some time with him. I tried to get the attention of postal workers, but no one would tell me what's going on. All of this was weird. I arrived at about the same time every day. The expediter scans all my seals and barcodes, and they unload me. But for the first time, but from the time I first arrived in Harrisburg from Bethpage, everything got weird. None of that happened. After waiting 6 hours, I went inside to figure out what's going on. I was told to wait for the transportation supervisor. This was also weird. 16 months I've been doing this. I haven't ever talked to the transportation supervisor for the United States Postal Service. I talk to an expediter. I come in, I see an expediter, that's who I deal with. If I have an issue, it's the expediter. I don't deal with anyone else but the expediter. I never talk to the United States Postal Service's transportation supervisor. Let's make that clear. I have my own transportation supervisor for the company that I work for. He's the one that gives me the details. He's the one that I listen to. I don't listen to this guy. He's the guy that would contact my boss if he needed something ran different. I've never spoken with this transportation supervisor from the United States Postal Service. They don't speak to people like me. He's a top guy. He's the kind of guy that would speak to my boss, not a trucker like me. The supervisor told me to drive to Lancaster without being unloaded in Harrisburg. This made no sense to me. I knew the ballots were loaded for Harrisburg, and that if I was to go to Lancaster, they would have to off-unload my those pallets in Lancaster to take off Lancaster stuff, to put the ballots back on the trailer, to send them back to Harrisburg. Doesn't make no sense. This was a real screw up in my thinking. I wanted my ticket. So whenever I go to a place, when I go there and whenever I'll leave, I'll get a ticket. I'll get a ticket, a slip, whatever you want to call it. It's the date, time that I'm supposed to be there. It'll have my trailer number on it. It'll have how much I'm loaded. It'll have the seal number. It has my name. It'll have who was the expediter. So I wanted my ticket, my slip. I call them tickets. Some people call them slips, okay? And then because I was there for 6 hours, I wanted my late slip too, because I wanted to be paid for sitting in that yard for 6 hours. So I wanted the ticket and the late slip for stopping in at Harrisburg. Also, I wanted it because if they tell me to take this load to Lancaster, I want to pull up the Lancaster of Harrisburg crap and be like, yeah, they just told me to come here and not have no ticket, because they don't look like I just came straight here, you know? Just to prove that I was there. And so others would know I wasn't the person that screwed this up. A ticket is always provided to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility. It proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip, since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there. And waiting for them to offload me. He refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it, in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone. Not there no more. 10R 1440. Since I started driving that Bethpage route, I've always had trailer 10R 1440. I liked that trailer. It was a nice trailer. I know you guys probably don't really know nothing about truck driving or trailers or anything, but the rear tandems had a, if you're driving light, the rear tandems will actually, the front axle will actually go up. Nice air ride. The doors on it, it worked great. Some of the trailers that place has, you could honestly put it on the back of a carrier and drop it off in the middle of the ocean and no one would worry about it. So that trailer I really liked, okay? What happened on October 21st was a series of unusual events that cannot be a coincidence. I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands, loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, I thought it was really awesome. I really did. I was like, sweet, I'm doing something for the presidential race, you know, this is cool. But as things became weirder, I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. I didn't know why, so I decided to speak up. And that's what I'm doing today. Thank you.
Okay, so interesting. That's an interesting account, because why are you transporting ballots into another state, right? From the state of New York to a state where we now have allegations of possibly a large amounts of ballots being put in. And if you think about it, the 288,000 this gentleman is talking about, and if you remember back to when I reported on the allegation that Skinny Joey, who is a Pennsylvania mobster who came forward and claimed that he was also helping with that, and that he's alleging that he had printed up 300,000 documents and dropped them off somewhere within Pennsylvania as well. Now, if these two gentlemen's stories are correct, and we don't know that yet, but this gentleman just came forward from who is a USPS a driver for them, you're talking about close to 600,000 ballots, which is the number in question almost, right? 600,000 to 700,000 ballots in PA. So we'll have to see how it all plays out with that. But that's some interesting testimony. I also pulled this Just the News thing. Whistleblowers allege ballots illegally cross state lines. So this is the same gentleman. You can see I won't play him again, but he's right here. But we can maybe watch the Amistad part and see what they say if you want. Testimony provides powerful eyewitness accounts of potential ballot fraud on a massive scale, said Amistad Project Director Phill Kline. Let's listen to Phil for a second, see if he has any more information.
We put together logical conclusions based on the information that we have. Anomalies. What should have happened in Harrisburg, Jessee's trailer is immediately unloaded. It was not unloaded in Harrisburg, even though his trailer contained mail for Harrisburg. Jessee should have been quickly unloaded and able to proceed. Jessee was forced to wait without explanation in a parking lot in the yard of that facility for 6 hours without explanation. Well, perhaps, maybe there was a new person operating as an expediter. Perhaps somebody was sick and somebody forgot. Perhaps. Jessee's only exchanges pleasantries and small talk with others who talk to him at U.S. postal facilities. Postal supervisors don't talk to drivers. All of our experts say that. Jessee talked to a postal supervisor. Normally, Jessee receives a ticket that proves he was there. That was refused. Now, that wasn't an accident. That was intentional. That was no, you receive no ticket. No explanation. Jessee unloads his trailer in Harrisburg before proceeding to Lancaster. Jessee was told to go to Lancaster while carrying the Harrisburg mail. Maybe we got somebody who doesn't know how the Postal Service works. Maybe we've got somebody who didn't communicate with the postal supervisor who gave that order. Perhaps there are independent explanations for all of these, but you can imagine the odds of all of that happening on the day he carried completed ballots across state line from New York to New Jersey, across the state line of New Jersey to Pennsylvania, where his trailer full of ballots disappeared. Jesse usually leaves his trailer at the dock in Lancaster at the end of his shift and picks it up the next day. It's gone.
The question is, where's Jesse's trailer, right? Where did those ballots end up? Where'd they go? Who touched them? Who handled them? And how long were they in the chain of Pennsylvania's voting system? That's going to be and that is a crime to, whoever did this. And of course, this gentleman is smart to come forward because he probably realized after some point that, hey, if these ballots aren't real, I'm participating in a crime. I am moving illegal ballots across state lines, and so I think he made a smart move by doing that, coming forward. Just before I end the video, I wanted to cover the CNN tapes. There's several small clips here, so let's watch the clips. And this is James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, who was secretly dialing in to the CNN's daily calls for months, and he's been taping them, apparently, according to his allegation. And so this is the first installment of the CNN tapes. So let's see if we could play it from the beginning.
CNN says on Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. editorial conference call how they, the Democratic Party, powerful interest groups, may determine how CNN will cover Trump not conceding the presidential election.
I just want to underscore something that Michael said earlier about the transition and Trump, because I've been talking to a lot of people this morning on both sides, and I just keep hearing the same thing, both from Republicans who have not come out to congratulate Biden, but also to those who have in the Democrats, and that is that we have to be, news organizations have to be very careful and very responsible about not giving Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding, because they feel the transition can go forward, and other than the national security briefings, which are critical to start now, they just don't want us to exaggerate that Trump isn't leaving office. And I'm going to have a lot of specific reporting on that later today, but just big picture wanted to underscore what Michael had said.
Yep, agreed.
On the issue of why it's important to get the transition going right, the 9/11 report talks about one of the problems was that the trouble that was brewing got lost during the transition. So if you wanted good concrete examples of what happens when you don't have a good transition, go look at the Twin Towers.
Yeah. So I think that's an important point. I think it was just a little bit yesterday in terms of national security. I think it's really important to raise again. I would encourage folks to think about, that 9/11 Commission report and the lack of transition.
Okay, that's the first video. So what's interesting about it to me, who is they? Who is they, right? Who are they taking their orders from? Who is the corporate master that's telling them what to do and say? And why are you using 9/11 imagery to try to paint a picture that the president, that there's not a transition going forward when you still have an election that's going on and that is in question? Let's watch the second video.
Jeff Zucker, president of CNN, explains to his editorial team on the 9 a.m. call that we recorded that they should, quote, lean in to not normalizing Trump's erratic behavior. Listen to this.
Okay, I just want to reemphasize that, I think we cannot normalize what has happened here in the last week. with Trump and his behavior. And I go back to what David Chalian said, that this is a president who knows he's losing, who knows he's in trouble, is sick, maybe is on the after effects of steroids or not, I don't know, but he is acting erratically and desperately, and we need to we need to not normalize that. You know, this is what we've come to expect for the last 3.5 years, 4 years, but it clearly is exacerbated by the time that we're in and the issues that he's dealing with. And I think that we cannot just let it be normalized. He is all over the place and acting erratically, and I think we need to lean into that. The Trump media, moves immediately from, okay, well, never mind that unmasking was, found to be completely nonsensical, to the latest alleged scandal, and expect everybody to just follow suit. So I don't think that we should be repeating unsubstantiated smears just because the right-wing media suggests that we should. Frankly, if we've made any mistake, it's that our banners have been too polite, and we need to go well after Lindsey Graham. There's a ton going on. Let's stay strong. Let's stay newsy. Let's stay urgent. Let's be smart. There is a lot of news out there, and Lindsey Graham really deserves it. Each of these so-called scandals for Trump, each of these things, we should just once again be careful to say that this is the one that is going to undo him with his voters. And to respond to David Chalian's points about politics, I don't know why we would expect any of these politicians to have a conscience and or expect that politics wouldn't be completely hypocritical. And for us to expect anything else would be naive.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems...
Jeff Zucker.
It feels to me like they're sort of planning out the attack, right? They're not planning out like news stories, right? You don't hear them talking about, hey, what's this story? What are we running with? It's just, how are we going to attack Trump? How are we going to paint the picture of him in a way that's going to hurt him, right? And I don't know why. I can't understand how you could think that that's a news show, right? I mean, you're basically just planning on destroying a person and reporting on them in a negative light. That's not the way that an editor or someone handling a news show should be acting, in my view. You should be talking about stories that would interest the public interest stories, and reporting on the politics of the country in a fair, balanced way, not just picking one side and trying to destroy that person with negative press. Here's the third one. Let's watch this.
On the 9 a.m. conference calls every morning at CNN, their top leadership views their competition, Fox News and Tucker Carlson in particular, as racist and misinformed. Roll the tape.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're going to talk about this story, I think it's unavoidable that you have to talk about the naked racism of Tucker Carlson. Because that's really what drove this anti-diversity push. Trump watches Tucker Carlson show and then reacts. And just as sort of the white supremacy hour they have on Fox News every night, I think it's, you can't disconnect them two. What Donald Trump did last night, and for anybody who watches Fox News, he was just airing all of the grievances he hears on Fox News every night. And that's all he did.
All right, well, he's not watching you guys because you're constantly berating him and giving him negative press. So it just seems funny to me that they're kind of pissed off about the fact that he's watching Fox or certain Fox programs when why would he watch you, right? I mean, you can't seem to report on in any way in a fair way, and you can't seem to, it's just, I find it really interesting, these meetings, right? Because what are you doing in the meeting? You're planning on, all you're talking about is the president, and you're doing it in a negative way, right? You're not talking about stories or what story that you want to challenge the president with that's a well-written, thought-out piece with sourced sources that you can quote in the article. That's a real article. That's something that you can go at the president with, saying, hey, I have a source that's saying this, and here's that source's name. you know, otherwise you could just make up any source you want, right? These people are basically involved in yellow journalism, as far as I'm concerned. They're just making up hit piece stories that have little factual evidence to them, as far as I can see. And they're obviously planning in these meetings how to destroy the president's character and his, it just doesn't feel like this is something that's fair. In other words, the news should be fair and balanced, right? That's what Fox says, but they're really not fair and balanced. And that's really the problem with most of our news. It's not fair and balanced. It's not showing you what the other side's doing. It's not showing you, trying to stay in the middle more and report factual evidence and news. What I'm doing is just, I'm covering articles that I find interesting, that I think are telling some or all of the truth, hopefully, right? And that's all we can do as a consumer, is try to find people we trust, try to find people that we think are telling us the truth or attempting to. And so with that, guys, I'll leave it there. This is Project Veritas page. These are the CNN tapes. The first round of tapes have come out. And we'll see if there's any more juicy bits that will come out. I'm sure this is just a taste. And I'm sure Mr. O'Keefe is probably holding back on some of the more tasty tidbits that are going to come down the road later. So with that, guys, I appreciate everybody listening to my vids. I wish you a wonderful day. Peace and love. And this is Ash, WAT News, signing off for now.